Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Dashboard Fridays. I'm Adam from SquaredUp, and today I'm joined by my colleague Paul. Hi Paul.
Hello.
Paul's one of our technical account managers, so for any of our customers watching this, you've probably had an email from Paul. Very friendly, very helpful, very knowledgeable, and today he's applying that knowledge to Azure Monitor. So Paul, I'll bring up your screen. Give us a talk through what you get out of box with the Azure plugin in SquaredUp Cloud.
Yeah, no problem. Excellent. Yeah, so we've got a few sort of dashboards available out of the box. So when you deploy the plugin, these will be readily available once you've got that in place. And the way we sort of structured it is we've got sort of dashboards focused on some of those common sort of key resources that you'll find in different environments. And we split them out into sort of separate dashboards for those, because obviously some of you might be using more platform as a service stuff, web app services, and some virtual machines, or a mix of those two. So we sort of provide you with a sort of dashboards for each of those sort of common resource items. So hopefully what you can see here is that one of them is a simple dashboard just based around alerts. So here we've got a dashboard that's showing sort of like the total number of alerts, a breakdown of the different severity of those alerts, and then sort of a table view of all those sort of different alerts with more details of those. And of course, you could sort of change the scope on these to sort of look at a different sort of time frame, depending on whatever it is that you need. We've set this out of the box one sort of set to sort of 30 days, but there's nothing preventing you from sort of changing that. So then you can sort of adjust it with the time frame picker up the top there if you wanted to sort of have a bit more control over that. And that's common across all the dashboards as well. So that's just a nice, simple sort of dashboard that gives you a quick sort of view into sort of the alerts that are going on in your Azure environment. But we have dashboards sort of focused on those different resource types. So for instance, we've got a dashboard here that's we simply call apps. So this is actually a combination of a couple of different things in terms of sort of looking at web app services, as well as sort of AppInsights metrics as well, depending on whatever it is you're using. And this, you could want to split these out, or maybe just focus on a single app. But this is a really nice starting point to sort of show you some of those sort of key metrics that you might need. So we've just got simply sort of showing the sort of total number of app resources that we have in this environment, as well as sort of some of those nice key metrics. So we can see sort of the number of availability tests that have ran, sort of like the availability percentage, which happily is showing at 100% at the moment. And you've got things like the test duration, but then sort of some of those other metrics, such as like the execution time, executions per seconds, number of requests, but also a nice handy sort of view at the bottom there to sort of show you if any sort of like errors have occurred. So any of those sort of 500 or 400 errors have occurred. And you can sort of see that as a trend over time. So that's sort of looking at the sort of more applications focused resources that you might have there. Now, you may have other sort of resources. I'll just sort of work my way down this sort of list here, but you may have other resources such as databases in your environment. So this is another dashboard that's out the box. And again, in a similar sort of vein, sort of showing some of those key metrics for any databases you have. So this is sort of looking at a couple of databases in our environment, but you can very quickly see things like successful connections or failed connections, things like the sort of like DTU percentage and that sort of thing. So you can get some of those key metrics that you might care about from about your databases. But of course, like I said, these are just sort of like some of the out-of-the-box metrics we sort of put on here from the data streams that we have available. But of course, any metric that you have in Azure Monitor that you want to get a hold of, you can put that into your dashboards.
It's probably just worth adding at that point as well that the plugin provides data streams, so everything you're seeing there. If you were to build a dashboard, pick a database that you're interested in, all of these metrics will appear in the list already. But we do have configurable data streams for Azure Monitor metrics. So if we haven't covered one with an out-of-box data stream, you can just pick one from a list, right? We'll show you a list of every possible metric available. So if you do have some custom metrics, if there's something that we haven't covered yet, it's really easy to build those dashboards and add any metric from Azure Monitor.
No, exactly that. Yeah. So a lot of these metrics you're seeing here are those sort of out of the box data streams. But as Adam says, I mean, when you add a tile in and you select the Azure plugin, when you come to sort of scope that data stream, you'll see little options at the bottom where it will say either plus cost or cost plus, or that sort of thing, or metric plus, and then you can sort of add the sort of metric in there that you want to sort of focus on. So it's nice and simple, really easy. It's just a few clicks to sort of put those dashboards together or add those data streams, and they'll be available then just to be selected when you next come in to sort of scope another tile. You don't have to sort of go through that again. You can just select that data stream. It will be readily available for you. So yeah, very good point there. And that's kind of how we've sort of built these up. So we've got things like the functions. So if you're using Azure Functions in your environment, we've got a nice dashboard on that as well. And sort of, so you can sort of very quickly see, we've sort of scoped this to a couple of Azure functions that we're focusing on here. You can quickly see the request, the response time, not just over time, but also the current recent sort of response times for those as well. And, a very quick view onto the any errors that are occurring. You can see everything's working nicely here. So, and as, the way these dashboards are set out of the box, we sort of limited the scope on these, so they're not sort of, if you've got sort of like a few different sort of resources in your environment, it's not going to sort of flood with all of them, but you can easily change those scopes yourself. So the idea around these dashboards is to be able to sort of give you a starting point. You can then adjust the scopes and the times that you need, or add the metrics that you want. And whether you want to keep that dashboard, or you just want to clone it and edit your own, or just edit the ones that we provide, entirely up to you. It's very quick and easy to sort of adjust these. We've just sort of focused it on a couple of key resources in our environment for the examples here.
The plugin itself, when when you add the plugin, the first thing all of our plugins do is sort of index the tools they're connecting to. So in this case, we're connecting to Azure and we're indexing things, and the out-of-box dashboards, like you say, are focused very much on those like most common resource types. But just again to chip in that we do index everything that's in Azure. It may not come up in our sort of scope builder with a pretty name like function app or virtual machine, that kind of thing. You may have to use the advanced scope to find it, but regardless of the type of resource you're using, you're going to be able to pull data from Azure Monitor, and things like cost and various other bits. We're not. I'm sure that there'll be cost appear on this somewhere, but we are going to do a more detailed video on sort of cloud cost in general, focusing on Azure, Google Cloud, AWS. So I think, Paul, you're planning to sort of very, very lightly touch on it in this video, but we'll cover it separately.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing. The key thing with the Azure plugin here is that we've produced sort of, as Adam mentions, it indexes a whole bunch of objects or entities, depending on terminology you want to use, all those different sort of items that you have. So we've sort of focused this on sort of several key sort of ones, because obviously we don't currently have an out of the box for every possible resource that someone could be using in Azure, but there's nothing stopping you from easily not only building dashboards for all those different resources, it will have those indexed there, but also you don't necessarily have to have these all on separate sort of ones focused on a particular resource type. I mean, you could be setting up a dashboard that's focused for an application, a team, whoever's looking after a certain environment, and you could sort of combine stuff from all across those resources. So you don't have to be quite so rigid. It's just for the out of the box ones, it's just a nice sort of way of splitting out, because as I said before, some of you might not be using Azure Functions at the moment, so you can sort of either ignore that dashboard or use it at a later time if you do start using those types of resources. So got full flexibility. And again, as the great thing with the Azure plugin is, Adam sort of mentioned, is we're showing sort of mostly metrics and alerts here, but that plugin's got the ability, all within that sort of one plugin, you've got the metrics, you can get the alerts, you can get cost data, and you can even sort of run your own sort of KQL queries against log analytic workspaces or application insights. So the whole plugin has all those features underneath it. So, although we're mostly just looking at metrics here today and alerts, there's all sorts of data that you could get at, if you need it from your logs to your metrics.
We actually have a separate video digging into AppInsights and log analytics. So if what Paul just said there around those configurable data streams for KQL are of interest, take a look on the dashboard gallery for those other dashboards.
Excellent. So yeah, so what we've got some other bits and pieces here. We're focusing on maybe you're looking at storage. In our case, it's not the most exciting dashboard to look at because it's got a bunch of disks and storage accounts. Maybe there's other stuff that you have in your environment there that you want to sort of look at. But this is just showing you again, you can sort of get a nice sort of overview of the breakdown of the different sort of storage items you have there. I mean, it's quite a good one to have in the sense that you can quite often these sort of number of disks that can get created from the different VMs that you've got in your environment. These things can kind of ramp up quite quickly. You could have all sorts of sort of different storage items in there, and this is a really nice sort of overview dashboard, so you can sort of see the breakdown of that, as well as sort of showing some of the sort of metrics that you can get through for the different disks that you might have. So just sort of a nice sort of overview dashboard there. And lastly, we have one which probably be quite commonly used in Azure environments, is one focused on virtual machines. And what we've done with this dashboard is done some nice sort of things with this, where this is sort of looking at sort of the subset of VMs. So we're looking at 4 VMs in this case, but again, this could be scoped to be looking at all the virtual machines across a subscription. Maybe you just want to look at the virtual machines of a particular resource group. It's entirely up to you. But what you can do is, the way that this is working is that when you sort of scope a tile, it's all sort of pretty standardized in terms of the fact that when you're, depending on what you're scoping on, you can still sort of group, filter and sort data as well. So as well as sort of pulling that data through to visualize it, so you've got it in that dashboard, you can also sort of do things like, in this case, here we're sort of showing the percentages of CPU and available memory, for instance. But what we can do is sort of say, imagine we had sort of like 50 odd VMs here. We could sort of set this to just sort of filter out so we can see the top sort of 5 or 6 sort of VMs that are using the most CPU or the most memory, for instance. So you can start to sort of get a better idea of not only how things are performing and the behavior of your environment, you can start to understand, well, these are the ones I want to focus on. Are these, VMs getting overly utilized or even underutilized? I mean, in the sort of cloud space, you want to sort of not only understand, is everything performant, but also, am I paying too much for what I'm using? You might want to sort of get an idea of whether things are just being over provisioned and underutilized. So you have the ability to sort of filter and sort that data how you wish to sort of try and get that view as well. So in this case, that's what we've done here. Obviously, a very simple example in terms of only 4 VMs here, and we're sort of showing the top 2. But you can sort of adjust the scope and sort of look across your environment there. And as well as that, it's showing those key metrics that you might want to be interested in seeing around VMs, whether it's sort of the disk read writes, the network input output, and as I said, those sort of memory and CPU usage as well.
Great. So just to quickly sort of recap, I'll ask you in just a second just to show us how the plugin is actually set up. But out of box, we've built a bunch of dashboards for the most common resource types, functions, databases, VMs, apps, that kind of stuff. And just acknowledging that people typically have quite large environments with hundreds, if not thousands, of resources. These out of box dashboards, the scopes that they create, you were saying they're limited to say like 5, so it's not going to create a scope with 1,000 VMs in it and try and show you CPU for all of them. We're just going to start out of the box by picking a subset of the resources that we found. So people typically will need to customize this a bit to, maybe it's the VMs in a particular subscription they want, maybe it's specific VMs by name. There's some configuration that we'd ask people to do to really sort of make this work for them. This is really kind of, what's that fun term? Art of the possible kind of stuff, right? It's just to highlight what the plugin can do. But we probably would think people are going to change these dashboards, clone them, modify them, maybe take bits and pieces from different places to build a dashboard for, say, an application that's not just one resource type, that kind of stuff.
No, exactly that. And it's just a really good sort of great sort of starting point for all those different sort of individuals that rely on or look after their Azure resources. It's just a really nice bunch of dashboards to sort of get a quick view into your environment straight out the box. But then you can easily see how these things are scoped and sort of get an idea of how to work with these. But it's so easy to sort of create a dashboard and add new tiles, and within a few clicks you can sort of create these dashboards. Within a matter of minutes you can have something focused on however you like. Very easy and simple to do.
Nice. And I guess with everything in SquaredUp, there are other plugins that probably sit quite complementary alongside this. So maybe all your resources are deployed through Azure DevOps using Terraform, and you want to also get your, your Azure DevOps information. Maybe you're monitoring some of those VMs with an APM tool, or that kind of stuff. Maybe you've got some other third-party cost monitoring tools. Being able to put all that data on one dashboard is kind of what we do.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's, if we could wrap up just by, if you could just quickly show us sort of how the plugin's configured, if there's anything interesting for people to know around how you actually connect into Azure.
Yeah, for sure. So if when you come to sort of set up plugins, you'll have this settings section down here, and then you this plugin section here. And when you sort of add in the plugin, you'll see there's a whole bunch of plugins. Like Adam mentioned, one of the real great benefits of doing this within SquaredUp is not just the nice way in which you can easily dashboard on your Azure data. It's that ability to combine stuff. I mean, quite commonly, not just ourselves, but many of our viewers here will probably be multi-cloud or even possibly hybrid. You will have stuff from on-prem across your cloud platform. The ability to push that not only into one sort of environment, but also one's dashboard potentially, to look at that sort of single environment, is a really powerful thing to be able to do. And it's kind of the fundamental thing of what SquaredUp is here to do, is to be able to sort of bring that data from one place and easily visualize it and analyze it in one view. But as you say, looking at the Azure plugin, we can sort of click on that plugin and you'll see it gives you sort of like a very clear indication of the information you need in terms of things like the tenant ID and the application ID. The one thing to, the application ID will be when you do that app registration or whichever app registration you're using, as long as it's got the right, role assignments and permissions to access the data. So has the reader rights to the particular, maybe you just want the plugin focused on being able to sort of view certain subscriptions or resource groups, for instance, as long as they've got the correct reader role. And if you want that cost data as well, obviously remember to add the cost reader role in as well. Sometimes that can be overlooked as well. But this is all documented on our support site as well. So there's nice help articles to sort of not only sort of talk about the plugin, but explain how you can sort of set that up. And once you've done that and hit test and save and it's added in, you're ready to go to sort of start dashboarding. And one final point on that, the great thing, another benefit of doing this is if you want to sort of do dashboarding across tenants, for instance, all you have to do is set up another plugin to point at a different tenant. And then when you're scoping your dashboards, you can quite easily just select the Azure plugin and the particular tenant scope plugin, and then you can sort of do multi sort of tenant dashboards as well if you wish to.
Nice. Well, one thing to add, by the time somebody may be watching this video, there'll be an update coming to the Azure plugin soon where we'll have full interactive Microsoft authentication built in. So you'll just be able to click a button and the Microsoft login box will pop up. You'll give consent to connect to your tenant and the plugin will just take it from there. We're working on that for a few different plugins at the moment, but Azure should be the first one out of the gate with just a nice simple sign in with Microsoft button. So even easier by the time someone's watching this video, hopefully.
Excellent.
Is there anything else to mention? Anything else of use, or shall I go ahead and wrap us up?
No, I think that's it for now. Just be great to see how you guys get on and get going, starting the Azure, and let us know if there's anything else that you feel that you get use out of the plugin. Let us know any sort of feature requests. We love to hear that stuff. We want to hear how you're getting on with this. With SquaredUp and let us know if the Azure plugin is doing what you need it to do.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much, Paul. So for just to quickly wrap us up, if you head over to squareup.com/dashboard gallery, you can find information like this on a bunch of our plugins, loads of different example dashboards, most of which are available out of the box in our plugins. And if you have questions, community.squareup.com is a great place to go and ask those. There's a huge audience of technical experts, a few thousand people now. And an update needed for this slide is to mention you can go to feedback.squareup.com if you have any requests for new plugins, anything that we don't currently cover in the product, maybe a key tool that you use in your environment that you'd love to sit alongside your Azure data, just let us know through that page. Yep, that's it for today. We'll be back with another episode at some point soon, but thank you very much for joining me, Paul.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Adam.
Thank you very much, and thanks for everyone for watching. See you next time.